I am ready. Hey everybody, aleatory writing. Holy shit. Aleatory writing, chance-based writing, computer-generated writing, quasi-non-intentional writing. What has happened to us? It's 9.2, Julia Block. We're not in Kansas anymore.
No, we're not.
We're not even in the back wings of the hospital where nothing will grow anymore.
No cinders, no broken pieces
No
of
cinders.
a green bottle.
Actually, I think sometime in this next hour we're going to talk about some of this chapter 9.2 version of postmodern writing and compare it to modern writing just to build a vocabulary about the differences and similarities between and among versions of modernism and versions of postmodernism. You think that would be instructive? It's a rhetorical question.
Yes.
Yes. All right, I want to reintroduce everybody, and then I'm going to start right in. And what I want to say about the phone call, the first phone call, is that it'll come in. We're not going to stop you from calling. Lily hasn't pulled the plug. But we're going to ask you to hold on a while, because what we're going to do at the beginning is we're going to talk about, I'm going to show you some Mizostics. I'm going to read for you some Mizostics that I wrote, and we're going to discuss the problems and possibilities of Mizostics first, before we talk to someone on the phone. Nonetheless, the first caller is going to receive a copy of Julia Block's book of poems, Letters to Kelly Clarkson.
Lucky caller.
Lucky caller, says Lexa. So you will get this, the first caller. But the first caller, for his or her pains, is going to have to wait a little while because we're going to get started. So here's where we're getting started. First of all, good morning, Amaris. Good morning, good morning.
Good morning, Al.
How are you?
I'm excellent. How are you?
Good. I'm fine. It's always great to see you, even in a little box like that. Emily Harnett, presumably in New Haven, presumably still at Yale. You haven't left.
So far.
Okay, good. Are they being nice to you?
They're being quite nice.
Good. Excellent. Do they give you the final word in every class?
Oh, I make sure of it.
Okay. Erica Kaufman, you are in upstate New York. Hello.
Hi, Al. How are you?
I was in upstate New York recently, and I woke up on this past Saturday morning. It was 26 degrees, and I had to scrape ice and frost off my car.
Yep, that's how it goes.
It's cool up there. Max McKenna in Chicago, it's not frosty yet, but boy, oh boy, we'll just wait a few weeks.
Next week we're getting into the 20s, so
oh man,
it's starting already. Yeah.
Hey, your meetup is when, Max?
We have there's a meetup this Saturday, the 8th, at Mazal's place. So people who are in the Chicago Forum know about that. There's also one at the Poetry Foundation, Tuesday the 11th at 6 p.m. And you have to register for that. So I hope Chicago people know that. I've said that a few times in the Chicago.
Okay. So there's Saturday in Chicago, then Tuesday in Chicago, then on November 12th in New York. The Kelly Writers House is coming to New York on the 12th to a gallery in Soho, the Mizell Gallery in Soho. This is actually, and Julia Block is reading. And so is Kenneth Goldsmith, who's a Chapter 9.3 poet. And I'm going to be leading a collaborative close reading of a poem, and I think Lily will be there. There's good chip. Lily will be there, and it'll be a lot of fun. So that's the 12th in New York in Soho. And then on the 14th, of November, I will be in Madison, Wisconsin, talking about ModPo, and I hope you'll all join us there. I also want to make a pitch for the November 17th Final Words webcast. So after this webcast, we will have one more regular webcast next Wednesday. I believe it's Wednesday. So this is a complicated week next week. A lot going on. And then the following Monday, which is the final day of ModPo, it's kind of a wrap-up day after the final Sunday. After the chapters close up, we'll have a final words day in the forums, and then I hope many, many, many people will come to the Writers' House here at the University of Pennsylvania on November 17th, starting at 11 a.m. We'll have probably a 2-hour webcast, and then those who are here will join us for lunch, and we'll have a party, and it'll be fun. Okay, so hello, Dave Poplar, to my right. How are you, buddy?
Great, good morning.
Good. I've already said hello to Julia.
Good morning.
We have Lexa, who has come from where, Lexa? The Lehigh Valley. From the Lehigh Valley. It's wonderful to see you. And Joe, you're here. Good morning, Joe. And we have Dan Bergman, community TA here, and also Dan's friends, a.k.a. parents, Meredith and Michael. Good morning to you all. And we have the amazing, stupendous, remarkable, ridiculously capable Chris Martin, who is handling, among other things, the audio, which is actually not an easy thing to do. You have to have a PhD in audiography to manage this. It's hard. And Zach Gardner, he who never gets into the camera because he's controlling all of them. Hey, Zach. Yeah. Okay. Quickly into some Mizostics. I'm going to read a couple of Mizostics that I wrote, and then I'm going to invite everybody in turn to go around and very briefly talk either about what my Mizostic did for me, or something about what you take to be your observations on people's understandable resistance or discomfort with aleatory writing. And I'm going to ask Lexa if you don't mind closing that window so we can keep the sound down. Okay, get us started. Jackie Lubeck is back in East Jerusalem, and she writes this riffy kind of Jackie-like thing about how much she likes chapter 9.2, and I'm going to read it and then read my Mizostics. I am totally happy and eureka'd. I love that verb. Eureka'd with John Cage, and so far 9.2. I really have to go to the bank now. I don't know if that's a metaphor or is that the West Bank? I think it might be the West Bank. Anyway, it's a bank. This is just it's so great to reach this point. And again, the surprise Sunday morning, even though it's Wednesday, Sunday morning for ModPoers means what, Dave?
That's when the new chapter is released.
The new chapter, that's the eureka, like Sunday morning, the new videos, yeah. Yep, for Jackie, she's saying it's the surprise Sunday morning is Wednesday. Oh shit, she says, I need to take a day off to deal with this chapter. One more thing, the hardest part of doing the essay is going to be picking the spine phrase. It's like choosing a tattoo, which I have none of, because there is not one thing that I love so much as to only want that on me. That is a really great way of understanding the choice of the spine, even though it's not as permanent as a tattoo. Okay, so Nikki Hoffman, who is a Philadelphia-based longtime ModPo person, recently, maybe last year, maybe more recently, create her own Mizostomatic. It's called PS Mezzo. And I'll send out a link to it, but you can, if you're a Facebook person, you can find it because the Facebook group has been buzzing about it. And Nikki reminded us back on November 2nd, a couple days ago, that she'd created it. It's more robust than the one that we've got inside the writing pen server. And I want to pause and note, first of all, thank you to Nikki. Second of all, she wrote, this is like crowdsourcing at its best. This is coding crowdsourcing, because Nikki, who's a good friend of ModPo and actually nearby, has done the work for us by writing this program, this Mizostomatic program. And a lot of people are using it, and there are 23 comments in the Facebook post praising her and praising this and getting excited about their own attempt at doing the Mizostics. And why are they? Just for those who don't write essays and haven't been paying attention, Julia, can you quickly explain in sort of just the most basic terms what we're doing for Essay 4?
We're getting inside one of the approaches to poetry that we're studying in ModPo, specifically chance operations this week, and doing it, like getting our hands in it and then reflecting on what that was like for us.
So this is your chance. This is as close as we come in ModPo to participating in the making of work, the making of poetic work. All right, so what I did, I'm going to read two Mizostics. I'm going to go around and get comments either on what I did or the value of Mizostics or your response to those who don't like it or are uncomfortable by it or have arguments against it. I mean, you don't have to cheerlead, but I guess I really want to hear what you have to say. So what I did is I was trying to understand the dislike of and the resistance to chance-based non-intentional writing. So there are two threads that are very robust of dissenters. I think dissenter is in both the thread titles of these. And I've been participating actively. If you've been there, you know I am all over that, which is kind of a brave thing to do, because once you get into an argument like that, you really want to stay there. You don't want to have your piece as a professor or the leader and back out. So I've been in there, and I've been talking to a lot of really fantastic people. And it's not really an argument. People are just coming around to all kinds of wonderful moderate positions. But I decided that I was beginning too dull in my response to the argument, and so I decided to use a Mizostic as a chance-based way of understanding what actually is going on there. So here's what I did. I took my own my most recent 4 posts, my own, to the dissenter thread. I used that as my oracle. Then as a spine text, I used dissenter thread. Okay, and this is what I came up with. C2, I refuse, T-O-O. C2, I refuse language around me. Perhaps matter the word. I made matter into a verb. Perhaps matter the word. This is different from Duchamp. Removing store, as in hardware store, removing store and putting it, such object in its language around us, half intended, deeming have, decided, ever wander a city, look of words and phrases, intended. See, we should read such language, just consciousness. I want to read sign, directions, and know perhaps matter of the word, a different from Duchamp. Removing the store. I like that, removing the store. Removing the store. Such an object in hardware. It's so much of language around us, half intended, deeming, have, decided, ever wander a word. And I don't want to comment on that. I want to leave it to you guys to comment on it, but I'll just say that it really started to teach me, it refreshed my understanding of both the resistance and the value of the Mizostic. Okay, one more, and then I'll open the floor to everybody. Okay, so the oracle text was the first post by the person who made the dissent thread. And the person who made the dissent thread, who's an active ModPoer and a fabulous person who's always, I'm not using his name because I wanted to make this a more generic comment and not comment on a person, but anybody who's in the thread knows who he is. And he's always there first on Sundays. He's really been great. He's also been tenacious in saying why he doesn't respect the aleatory poetry. So I took as the oracle the first long post that he wrote, and I used as the spine, ModPo wants dissent. Okay, and here's what came out. Myself in to the entire represented chapters, and of trying without the at from words, seems confused, pose, fails to words freedom it, fails to words freedom it, occurs to me incantatory power. The caveat, while texts can be so surely texts, while texts can be so surely texts, or the very least. Poetry is to me the final poem, not the led to it I biographical detail, or may whether it a single, or whether mimics one, whether longhand typewriter, or was office product of poets working together, whether it was written or a Saturday random, tried to claim these it to me, to excessive jargon, language, inserting additional layers between them their words, and to humanity seeks to reduce object attempting and celebration muteness. So 2 things I learned from that Mizostic about the dissent. 1, seeks to reduce object attempting and celebration muteness. And 2nd, poetry is to me is final poem, not the led to. So that's weird. Anyway, so I'm going to go around and ask each of you briefly to comment on what I did, what I might have learned, what is the exercise of a Mizostic in clarifying, refreshing, and or a response to those watching who are a little late to the aleatory game or a little unsure about why we're doing this in 9.2. It sure doesn't feel like a summa of the course, but maybe it is. So let's start with Dave. What do you think?
How could
Comments?
How could you not like celebration mutinous? How could that not be a
What does
driving
it mean?
phrase? you're just celebrating and saying "fuck you" to convention. I think that's fun and important. But the thing I like about these exercises, these poems, is when people who don't really read poetry think about poetry, they think it's just such a personal, completely ego-driven, egotistical endeavor almost. So the way that Jackson McClough specifically talks about trying to remove the ego entirely and see what's left, it changes the whole dynamic. As a reader, you're no longer looking for the meaning in the poem. You're no longer passively sitting waiting to be just given the meaning, but it's completely up to you. So I really like that, and in a way, you're forced to just find things on your own and look at things differently. And what the example that keeps popping into my mind is we're given a stop sign and things like that we always see, and they just come upon automatic meaning. But can we see a stop sign as just a red octagon with squiggles and lines inside of it?
Or a stop sign that is ironic. A stop sign that you encounter on a lonely road that goes for miles in the middle of Iowa cornfields, and there's no intersection. And there's a stop sign that is ironic. I mean, stop, which is the stop sign, is the most fixed, presumably acceptable denotation anywhere. It's octagonal, it's red, it says stop. There is no ambiguity, and yet if you encounter one in a situation where it makes no sense to stop, it's ironic. Even a stop sign can be ironic. Julia, what do you have to say about all this?
I really love texts can be so surely texts, and I noticed both in the way this is written and the way you read it that the Mizostic leads you more deeply into the text that existed before this poem, and so there's a way in which the language is kind of making itself. And I also noticed that its texts can be so surely texts. Maybe some texts are not surely texts. Yeah. Right? There are different kinds of texts.
Yeah, I think this is a pedagogical thing. I used it as a pedagogical exercise. But who is teaching whom is not clear, right? Because the dissenter is teaching me, but I'm filtering the dissenter, the person, the ModPoer who's dissenting. I'm using his words through, oracularly through a spine text to teach me, but I'm not sure who's teaching me. And it seems to me that's I feel like I'm exteriorizing the lesson somehow. Yeah, that's great. Lily, you want to say something next?
Yeah, I think, well, you were talking before about like taking a moderate position, and I kind of feel like it's and why we're turning to aleatoric and chance poetry this week is like playing up the experimental aspect to experimental poetry. It's like, I don't think that Jackson McClough is saying all language forever from now on has to be chance and randomized. He's really just saying, let's see what happens when we experiment with language and when we try this out. So I think people feel really uncomfortable when they think about language as going away or not working anymore. And so I think that for me, that's like, or that could lead to like not liking this kind of poetry because you're worried that it's just calling for the complete destruction of language or like the complete destruction of meaning making or communication. But it's not like he's saying all language forever has to be this way. It's really just like, let's try it out and see what new things we're led to discover.
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Lily. It's an exercise. I mean, that's what I was using it as. I wasn't claiming. Can we get a portable mic to Dan? Or Michael will read for Dan. Good morning, Michael. Good morning, Dan.
Good morning,
Meredith.
I want to hijack this for a moment and say something in my own right.
Oh, you're speaking for Michael Bergman?
I'm speaking for Michael Bergman because I have to tell the world about my favorite sign. It's as you pull into the New York Presbyterian Weill Cornell Medical Center in New York, and it says "Proceed to stop." And I just think that's a national treasure. Okay.
Take it next time you're there. Take a picture, please.
I will. What Dan spelled about your Mizostics is, I'm awestruck. Our love of meaning is so great. Our love of language is so great that we revel in it, even when freed from the effort of expressing our love in reading and writing.
You know, Dan, since you're using the word love a lot, I haven't said this to you, and I might as well say it in public. I love you. I mean, I love you. I think that's a shared feeling. That's a great statement. Thank you, Dan. Amaris, you're up next. Quickly, say something about this that's wise, because you're so wise. Amaris, you are so wise.
I guess I can understand the resistance to chance operations because going off what Dave said, along with lacking ego and intention, it can often seem machinic and lacking in emotion as well. But what we just saw from your two Mizostics is that the effect is actually quite humorous, and also from Dan's comment that it sort of inspires love of language, and that it allows language to just happen to us. So both in the creating and the reading of it, the two phrases that stuck out to me from what you read were matter, the word, so word is material, and just taking, sort of allowing the poem to sort of vibrate on its own, maybe in a Cagean sense.
Yeah.
And then when you said fails the words, the idea of taking that guy's resistance and turning it around on him was, I think, pretty clever. So.
Yeah. Oh, you're saying I'm clever. That's good. That's a compliment. It's not said that often. I'm called lots of things, but not clever. My favorite phrase when I'm trying not to be so anxious and intentional is "shit happens." Right? It reminds me of reality. Shit happens, right? And the best thing you can do is adapt to it. Well, I think what we're saying here, and this derives from Amaris's comment, is language happens. Language happens. And why not let it happen? That's why Oracle is such a great word, because basically we're learning from the language that comes at us. Okay, Emily, quick comment on any of this, please.
Yeah, as I was listening to Amari's talk, I began to think about how our relationship to modernism as a whole might sort of shape our relationship to aleatory poetry. If we love modernism because it revitalizes language and it allows us to use and think about language in new ways, then, aleatory poetry as the most novel form for making language should be something that we're able to rejoice in and find refreshing and revitalizing in the same way that we think that Stein and just all linguistic innovation allows us to really celebrate language.
Yeah, I mean, it's a paradox, right? The best way, and not everybody's going to agree, this is a really modern/postmodern take on language. Not everybody's going to agree. I mean, Antonin Scalia, whose intellect I respect, feels that language is best when it is stable. Language is best when it's predictable, when we can understand what people say. There's a strict constructionism that I do respect. I just don't like to live life that way. I want language to be constantly dynamic. And really what Emily is saying is all the pleasure is in watching language change and actually letting it change and contributing to its change and throwing us off. That the difference is spreading. If it were sameness spreading, it would be the same. Erica, comment on this?
I think about this a lot, and the way I think about chance and aleatory writing, I have to say, comes largely from Joan Retallack, and I would recommend that everybody. Yes, I would recommend that everybody read The Poethical Wager, which you can actually get online as a free ebook. It's probably one of my favorite things in the entire world. And what I've learned from Joan, which has helped me to grow to love this kind of writing, is that what's underlying all of these seeming chance operations and experiments is the idea of action, and that language is something that is active, and to think about the action of composing and composing as this wonderfully unpredictable occasion for the making of meaning collectively and collaboratively. So it's a combination of order and accident.
Yeah, and it's collaboration between and among whom, Erica, in any given case?
Everybody.
Everybody, right?
Anybody, yeah.
In that poem that we study in ModPo week 9.2, or sorry, week 9, chapter 9.2, by Joan Retallack, it's called Not a Cage, right? And who's collaborating? Who are the collaborators there?
The collaborators are books. The collaborators are language that she's engaging with, that we're engaging with. I don't
One's
think.
library. One's
Yeah.
library.
It's her library,
Library.
but I think it's bigger than that too.
It's sort of like she's sort of engaging with what you might be called the Western literary tradition in looking at all those books that she's in fact discarding. So she's trying not to cherish those books, but she's taking them off the shelf and she's extracting something from them so that it's a kind of orchestra or a kind of chorus, and she's turning something accidentally amazing out of it. Okay, thank you, Erica. And finally, before we go to our phone caller who's been super patient and probably should get 2 books and not 1, let's hear from Max McKenna.
I think the resistance is twofold. On one hand, we have this strong attachment to the ego, as Dave was saying. We have this fetishization of individual expression. And on the other hand, it's because these aleatory, these poets engaging in aleatory techniques have to go to such great lengths to kind of undo that attachment and that fetish, which in part is re-entrenched in modernism, and so they're working in this tradition and having to kind of push back on that. It's a relatively recent fetish. If you think, I'm in this class right now where we're reading lots of weird 19th century Gothic science fiction romance novels, and lots of them were published anonymously. They kind of have weird frame narratives. They're all sort of copying each other and stuff. Like, there's a lot of exchange happening. There's lots of copying, and they're not really as interested in this kind of heroic, romantic, individual expression. And I think too of the whole history of scribes and stuff, right? Who are always just sitting around copying other people's words.
Copying, yeah.
There's a lot of copying that's always happened in writing, and
so
it's always there.
This is how you get from chapter 9.1 to 9.3. All right, so what you just said takes us from 9.2 to 9.3. Max, are you awake enough to say how that works from 9.2 to 9.3 in terms of copying and non-individuality? If you can, I will.
Well, if we're thinking of soliloquy, for instance, right, where
by Goldsmith.
Yeah, Kenny Goldsmith's soliloquy, which we'll read next week. There's almost this kind of documentary approach to copying, say, rather than reproduction that we get with the aleatory poets.
Right, or Caroline Bergvall's poem in which she uses the same line 80-some times, attempting to translate a very difficult, important line from Dante into English, and she just copies all the translations of that one line to create a poem. That's how we get from 9.2 to 9.3. All right. Well, thank you all for that. That was terrific. And now let's go to our caller who's receiving a copy of Letters to Kelly Clarkson. Who is it, Lily?
Well, actually, this is Joyce Pope, and we've already sent her a copy of this book, so she's graciously ceded it back to the phone caller pot. Yeah.
That is so cool.
But she's,
you want to put her on? Okay. Mama Pope.
Hey.
Hey.
How are you? Hey, how are you all?
The meatballs are still in my freezer, and I am so excited about a meal I'm making this weekend based on the meatballs.
Ask Dave to look in the
for
freezer. I think there's meatballs for him, too, and I forgot to tell him that.
Can we get a camera on Dave's face here? Okay.
How many meatballs did you eat, Dave Popular?
Okay, here's Dave. Now, look at Dave. Make a sad face. Okay. He didn't get as many meatballs as Al did.
Oh no,
Joyce.
So yes, I'm very remiss.
No, you were great. We just loved having you here.
I know. I wanted to just call because it's the first anniversary of the encounter with Tender Meatballs, and I felt such freedom this time because I haven't written essays this year except for this particular Mizostics, and what I decided to do, because it was strictly egomaniac that I am, I took the 2 poems that I wrote about Tender Meatballs. One was more Steinian than the other, and I used that was the oracle, and then my own original work, and then my spine was just meatballs, and it's so much fun.
Do you have one of them in front of you?
Yes.
You want to read one, if it's not too long?
No, it isn't long.
Okay.
My fingers, gold to be herbs, salt, love, called those. Mix then a between balls, meat, sizzling, bubbling sauce. make tender balls meet. Plop, plop goes more bread and the ball.
That's so good. Yes, Joyce Pope, you are a poet. Yeah, I keep hearing Jack Kerouac, who probably wouldn't like this kind of method.
No.
Well, he might have, but I hear Jack saying, "Be dumb saint of the mind," you know, and you can be a genius. All of you can be geniuses. So thank you, Mama Pope, for calling. This is great. It's great to hear from you.
And I just want to say one more thing, that the new year is the new year, and the new poem will be the traveling tender meatballs, because I'm taking them to San Francisco with me, and the lucky winner is going to get a frozen package of meatballs.
Oh, that's great. Now, so Joyce Pope is referring to the San Francisco meetup, which we didn't talk about, and the date on that is next week, right?
No, tomorrow.
It's tomorrow. Great.
Yes,
so tomorrow is,
we'll
I believe, the
there.
6th. So on November 6th at 1 p.m. San Francisco time at the Public Library, the main branch, Molly O'Neill is flying up from L.A. to be there, and Therese and Joyce Pope and a bunch of other people are meeting her there, and I hope if you're in the Bay Area, you'll go. Thank you, Joyce. Good to talk to you. Love you so much.
Bye-bye. Love you too. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Wow, she's great. Really like her. So the next caller is getting... Julia, we can't give this thing away. And here's the next caller. Oh, cool. Do you have stuff in there?
I do. So Shirley Collins posted a question for Gwen from another thread. So thanks, Shirley. This is a good question. It's about chance. Aside from a wing word here or there, this poem is created with very little intention by the author. We're talking
somebody's Mizostic.
Yeah,
okay. Yeah.
So is it right to do is it right to do a close reading for meaning if no meaning was intended? If the meaning is purely coincidental?
Great. Great question. All right, I'm going to throw that question out to the gang here. Let's repeat the question. Should we do is a chance non-intentional poem appropriate to do a close reading of? All right? So let's get, who wants to raise your finger if you want to answer this. We've never done this before. Nobody wants to. Ah, Meredith does. All right, so let's get a portable mic to Meredith. Then I'm going to call on Emily, who didn't raise a finger, but tough. Oh, Amaris did? We're going to go to Amaris and then Emily. Yeah. No, she didn't. We misread you. Meredith, are you speaking for Dan or Meredith?
No, I'm speaking for me, but I'm really nervous. I think the use of the word right is really interesting. Is it right? I don't really think that's applicable, because we're talking about a kind of instinctive processing that the reader does. When I heard the word deeming and the words hardware store in the same poem, I was just filled with delight, because I never say the word deeming in a hardware store. And my mind kept kind of trying to do dreaming, and I could feel the cogs spinning, trying to make sense of this. And I think there's perhaps an anagram that might be useful, which is that a lot of poetry, a lot of our effort in listening to poetry is an attempt to make it lucid. But this is really ludic. It's playful. It's fun. So is it right to try to do a close reading? I don't think that's the question. Is it fun? Is it fun to do a close reading?
Yeah. We are really about fun. I mean, one of the great things about the New York School poets is they were having fun. I think actually all the chapters. I mean, you can't say that Walt Whitman is not having fun. Sometimes I worry about Emily a little bit. Not Emily Harnett, but Emily Dickinson. On the other hand, Emily Dickinson's poems are so full of powerful pleasure. You know, I really think so. Lily is like saying, ow, Emily is fun.
I'm saying she's having fun.
She's definitely having fun. Maybe at our expense sometimes. Yeah. But so that's a great comment, Meredith. Thank you so much. All right, who do we have on the phone?
This is John calling from Seattle.
Oh, we've talked to John before, I think.
He's ready to go.
Okay. Hello, John.
Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome back to ModPo. How's it going? Are you up to speed in ModPo?
Well, you know, there are very few things that I would get up this early for, and you guys are one of them. So.
Oh, that's cool. Wait a minute. It's not that. It's 10:30. What, 6:30? No, 7:30. Come on, man.
7:30. Ah, okay.
I've been up since 4:30 Eastern Time.
Yeah, but you're an insomniac.
Yeah, that's true. You like to sleep. So are you caught up with ModPo?
I am. I make the time for the primary program. I haven't got into the auxiliary stuff, but I'm saving that for after,
Sure.
after this.
ModPo Plus, it's optional, it's there, you can have it anytime.
Yeah, love it. I just wanted to comment on this section, this chance poetry making, which I think is so amazing. I love Bernadette Mayer's list, and this weekend, my husband and I were in Vancouver for our 20th anniversary.
20 anniversary? 20? Seriously?
Seriously, we were married 10 years ago in Vancouver, so it was a double celebration.
Yeah.
So we met 20 years ago. But I was out on the seawall. I don't know if your folks know Vancouver. It's a beautiful city. And I just took my iPhone, my phone, excuse me, my Android, and I picked up chance comments as I was walking, and it was amazing in that I noticed that my sense of focus went from visual to audio, and it was really an amazing experience. I found myself almost in a tunnel of sound.
Yes.
And so I love the Mizostics. I took Shakespeare for my one of Shakespeare's sonnets, and in it I found not humor, but really a very powerful political message, which whoever reads my essays will comment on whether they think it's powerful or not. But this is a wonderful way to play with language. And I think that the concept of an oracle is amazing, and I want to take it to the next level. It's not just oracular, it's oral. So it's an oracle, it's a sound, a sounding. And I think I mentioned this last time I called. But there's a sounding that's involved, and one more brief comment. The fellow who did the AIDS poem, I'm sorry, I forgot his name, Bob.
Bob Perlman, yeah.
Bob Perlman. When he was reading his poem, the stopping of his breath in the reading of it made it so much more powerful to me than simply the reading of it. So it is the sounding to me that's so amazing.
John, would you stay on the line, because I want to collect a few comments and permit you to respond to them.
Certainly.
So I want to invite my colleagues, and I was hoping to go to Amaris and Emily first on this. What John is referring to really eloquently is something in our video discussions we call shifting attention. And what John is saying is actually something about life. He's saying that, and I feel this to be the case too, that if we do things that shift our attention, Bernadette Mayer is the best at asking us, giving us assignments to do that, we begin to see the world and hear the world more fully. It's really like a good thing for a human being. Ironically, since aleatory writing is accused of being automated and inhuman, it actually causes us to be, I think, more human in our response to the environment around us. So with that lead-in, giving you a little time, Amaris, would you say a word or two in response to John?
Yeah, John's comments about the oracular nature of this poetry, as he termed it, reminded me of Cage being in that chamber and finally listening only to the sound of his heart, his circulation system, and a quote by him saying that it's sort of that putting himself in that situation reminded himself that language is a global situation, in the sense that it happens in a nonlinear way. So John's reaction seems to me really to gel with what Cage was saying, trying to do.
Beautiful. Beautiful, terrific. Emily Harnett?
Yeah, so far we've been talking about how this poetry mostly changes our relationship to language, which it definitely does. But I love the idea that this extremely sort of radical linguistic experiment can also change our awareness of the personal and change our relationship to the personal in this way.
Yeah, that's great. So, John, what I'd like to do, John, you're still there?
Yes, I am.
What I'd like to do is read you some of Bernadette's writing experiments and get you just to react to them in any way you like. along the lines of what you've been saying. And while that's happening, Eric, do you mind? Would you like to join us at the table here? You have to, but you have to slide that way a little so I can see the screen, basically. Yeah, thanks. Okay, so John, I'm going to read you some of Bernadette's writing experience. I'm going to ask Julia and Lily, if they don't mind, also to respond in any way they like to this. Okay, I've selected a few that I really love. All right, get someone to write for you, pretending they are you. Experiment with writing in every person and tense. Every person, meaning first person, second person, third person. Every person and tense every day. Write what cannot be written. For example, compose an index. Attempt writing in a state of mind that seems least congenial. Bernadette is the best at that. Write on a piece of paper where something is already printed or written. It's all profound, isn't it? Find the poems you think are the worst poems ever written. I'm reminded of a thread where people are saying, is there such a thing as a bad poem? That's a tricky one. Find the poems you think are the worst poems ever written, either by your own self or other poets. Study them, then write a bad poem. That's very Cagean. That's brilliant. Write a work gazing into a mirror without using the pronoun I. Attempt to speak for a day only in questions. Write only in questions. John, you first. React any way you like, then we'll go to Lil and then Julia.
Thank you. So when Bernadette Mayer was on the show, I like to call it, at the writer's house, she said two things.
Wait a minute, John. What does that make me? Does that make me like Johnny Carson, or who am I?
Well, you're kind of a ringleader, but you know.
Okay. You're not pinning me down. Okay.
No. I love that she said that it's an impossibility to have writer's block, and yes. So that I thought was incredible. And this list, with this list, how could anyone ever have writer's block? She's given us literally a lifetime worth of writing possibilities.
Yes. Yeah, that's really great. Julia, I could tell. I couldn't see you as I was reading, but I can tell that you just love this stuff.
I do.
As a teacher, too, right?
It's no secret that I'm a huge Bernadette fan. And what this conversation makes me think about is two main things. One, a form is a rule, and a rule is not neutral, and it isn't spontaneous, and it didn't originate out of thin air. It's a rule that some people agreed on should be a rule, and one of the things many of our poets are doing is questioning the validity of that rule and finding new rules and playing with them. And I love Meredith's use of the word ludic because it's fun, and there can be intention and almost an activism in that fun also.
Time to state, parenthetically, before we turn to Lily, because I can't wait to hear what she has to say about this, state, parenthetically, kind of like it's a teacherly moment, the difference between modernism and postmodernism. So modernism understands what Julia just said about the tyranny of rules that are naturalized and unquestioned. And then they had this fantasy in various forms, the fantasy of objectivity and imagism, the fantasy of having no form in free verse in Williams and even in Stein. And so they went from that critique of rules to a fantasy of discarding the rules. Postmodernism, so much like modernism in many ways, but one of the main ways in which it's not is an allowance of rules, but rules of our devising, rules that are self-consciously deployed. In other words, constraints. Right? The ultimate constraint poem is in ModPo Plus this week. It's Nick Montford trying to write an abecedarium poem, a poem that has 2 words each for every one of the 26 letters. It's called The Exhaustion of Libraries. So you can think, well, how is that cool? How is that hip? How is that modern? Well, this is a poem that tries something impossible in order to liberate the writerly ego. So that's, I would say, a main difference between postmodernism. And, you know, when we have Susan Howe writing My Emily Dickinson in 9.1 saying, who polices questions of grammar? She doesn't mean that we're going to throw grammar out. A lot of people who dissent from this kind of work think it's anything goes, we're throwing grammar out. Just wait till next week and you see Christian Buck try to write a poem in which he has to use words that only have a single vowel at a time. A whole chapter of words with an A in it and no other. and try to say that anything goes there. It's the opposite of anything goes, but it's liberating because we're conscious of the policing of grammar, the policing of rules. How did I do?
Really quickly that even Williams would say that free verse is itself a kind of rule that
Right.
cannot go unquestioned. I mean,
Right.
he actually went so far as to say there's no such
Right.
thing as free verse because that is a form.
Right. So the old argument in modernism where Frost is saying you can't play tennis without a net, and Williams saying, fuck that, I want to play tennis but I don't want a net. Well, the fact is, ultimately in postmodernism, yes, net, of course, but I want the net on the side, I want the net suspended in the air. Yeah, net, but let's reinvent the game. We can still have the net and reinvent the game. So that kind of becomes a non-argument. Lily, by this point, maybe you've forgotten those fabulous Bernadette experiments, but do you want to respond to it? And then,
Yeah.
John, we'll go back to you for a final word on this.
Yeah, I think something that John said about finding a lot of meaning in his experiments that he went through, like, reminds me of something that I heard Charles Bernstein say about Bernadette Mayer's experiments once, which is that, like, some of them we laughed, like, at the premise because it's kind of funny, like, look in the mirror and write a poem where you don't use the word I is really funny, but Charles is like, challenge yourself to write these exercises and not have them have to be humorous, like, have them be serious and serious writing in a way that's also still playful. And so that's what I really value about the challenge of going through some of Bernadette's exercises, is like writing them and challenging yourself not to just go for a humorous angle, but like Amaris was saying, like at the beginning of the webcast, like find a way to see emotion in the writing that you're doing in this more experimental way without having it have to be like lyric or romantic emotion, and also without having it have to be funny. So it is, even though it seems like programmatic or machinic was the word that Amaris used, I think, like it seems straightforward to just follow instructions. There's actually a lot of subjectivity that you put into the writing, but it's just a cool way to get away from the burden of having to make that sort of like romantic, lyric, emotional meaning on your own.
Nice. So well put, Lily. We cannot suppress human subjectivity, but it really is enlightening, deeply, deeply instructive to push it back and find it emerge in new kinds of ways. John, you're still on, right?
Yes, I'm here.
Do you want to get a final word? This has been a great discussion.
Yes, loved it. Thank you. Yeah, I guess I just want to say, throughout this course, the thought that's been in my mind is that letters, 26 letters, randomly thrown together, not randomly, with net, without net, we wind up using these sigils, these symbols, as sigils, and the oracular part of this is what's kind of blowing my mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what I'm finding in each, even in the dissenter today, there was a phrase, I wish I had written it down, but it was something about something Saturday that was so beautifully poetic, and without trying, trying without trying. This is a very Zen exercise, and if you can kind of let yourself flow with it, it becomes both profound and silly simultaneously. It's just a wonderful thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really great. Yeah, when I got that Saturday thing, I thought, wow, I'm a poet. But wait a minute, no, I'm not. Somebody else is. But I am. Hey, John, we don't know each other, but I feel you're a friend of this project, and happy 20th to you and your husband.
Thank you very much,
Yeah.
and I feel the same way. I feel friendly toward all of you.
Thank you so much. And have a great day, and go back to sleep if you want.
No way. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, John, are you still there?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to send you Julia Block's book.
Yay.
You're going to love it. Letters to Kelly Clarkson.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Okay. All righty. So the next caller is going to receive a copy of my book. Very ponderous, big fucking book. A tome, you might even say. But this is really like a very expensive book. That is to say, the pirates who published it, no, they're very nice, University of North Carolina Press. This caller is going to get a copy of this book whether he likes it or not, or she. Okay, what I'd like to do before we bring this caller on is I'd like for Dave and Julia to recite some of the tweets. Sorry, Julia, you have to go to a different window. Recite the tweets. I'm going to ask Eric and Max and Erica to respond to any one of the tweets that you hear that's interesting to you. Okay? So we may begin. Dave, recite a couple.
Therese Pope tweeted, "Go Mom."
Julia?
Karen Alenier, or Alenier, has been doing a beautiful job of tweeting little snippets from what we're saying. Shift of attention. We see and hear the world more fully. It's fun to do a close reading, says Dan B's mom. We love the family who comes to ModPo. Let us talk.
Wait, praise for Meredith?
Yes.
Who's known as Dan's mom? Yeah.
Let us talk, Lettucetalk, says, please send a copy of your Meatballs poem, Mama Pope, so maybe you'll be willing to post that to the forum.
Maybe Therese will post it, or, yeah. Let's go back to Dave.
I'm looking for one who wrote a Mizostic about the election last night.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you didn't find it yet?
Not yet.
Couple more.
Ray Maxwell, reinvent the game, reimagine the structure, destroy and recreate the art form again and again. Stein inside mayor.
He fit all that into a tweet?
Yeah.
Ray, you're such a radical, man. You are turning into such a radical. A couple more, and then I'll let Eric and Erica and Max reply.
I can't find it.
A couple more? There are others there, Dave. You don't have to quote only that one.
Well, most of them are quoting us, so.
Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I just want to throw in that if you are frustrated after last night, I'm here in the United States, so if you're frustrated by the rules, and some people may be taking the mickey out of the rules, then maybe it's a good idea to start playing with the rules.
Eric's been radicalized by the American election, I think, and you want to throw your window open, and you want to shout to all the world, what? I'm so mad I can't take it anymore. What do they say in network? I'm mad as hell.
I'm mad as hell. I'm not going to take it anymore.
I'm not going to take it anymore.
I want to spend 2 years playing with the rules until the people who have played with the rules to win this election are disgusted with the rules.
Okay, this is a political editorial comment, and what Eric Weinstein says is not necessarily reflecting the points of view of ModPo officially. Max, what do you have to say in response? Oh, sorry, Julie.
I just wanted to share this tweet really quickly. Terry Talty has posted onto Twitter a sound file of Siri's poem as recorded by, or recording of a dinner conversation, and she asks, is it right to do a close reading of this?
What is it exactly?
So I guess Siri,
meaning the automated
lady who lives
avatar?
in the iPhone,
yes,
recorded a dinner conversation, and Terry's posted it
totally,
online,
of
and
course,
you can listen to it.
Totally, it's totally in line. Max, any thoughts on these tweets?
I like how that you asked Julia and Dave to recite the tweets. It's a very Chapter 9 kind of idea. But I think to speak to some of the political currents that Ray is picking up on, or Eric is picking up on, I think that there is like an indisputable political project in a lot of these poems, and I think because if you think of it historically, a lot of these are coming out like at a time where there's new attention to the way that language functions politically, right? I mean, it's something that the appointed language poets have made and so forth. So I think that there is there is this idea of how can we stretch the rules? How can we, what other ways of existing can we find within these systems that are kind of given to us? And that's one of the points I think that aleatory poetry makes, right? Like how far can we push the limits that we have to work within?
Really well said, Max, as usual. Erica, thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, just to echo what Max is saying about the political, I think that one thing that's definitely important to both Cage and to Retallick is that you can use language and use these various aleatory strategies as a way to try and engage in making sense of how to live in the world that we live in, which is so full of constant chaos.
Yeah. Terrific. Thank you all. Lily, who's on the phone?
This is Kent Ekberg. He already has a copy of your book, so he is also ceding his copy back.
We are starting to run out of things here. All right, so Al's A Counter-Revolution of the Word, the conservative attack on modern poetry, 1945 to 1960, will be deferred to the next caller.
Yeah.
Hello, Kent. Can you hear me, Kent?
Yes, I hear you loud and clear, Al.
It's good to hear you. I saw you back in September in New York.
Right.
You're looking great.
Thank you. You'll see me again in Pennsylvania on your last day of class.
You're going to come to the Final Words webcast on November 17th.
I am.
Great. Good, Kent. You were here last year for that, too. It was fun. Do you have a comment or question?
No, it's just I wanted to let you know it's my birthday, so I just thought I'd call in and check in with you all and say hello.
Kent!
And have you wish me a
You're
happy
53 today.
That's
so
right.
Great.
Wonderful being 53 again.
That's actually, I mean, it's meaningless if you don't know the banter between me and Kent. He's not 53. He's probably a little older than that. But he is happily retired. Yeah. So happy birthday, Kent. Has anybody sung happy birthday to you yet, it being only 11 a.m.?
Not yet, no.
Okay. All right, so we are about to sing happy birthday. Now, let's get the portable mic over here so there's more voices than ours here. You people all unmute yourselves. Come on. Is this going to blow your mind, Chris?
There's a long, complicated copyright history around the happy birthday song, just warning you.
Have we been through this with you, Max? I think we have.
Unless you've acquired the rights, I don't know if it's a good idea.
Chris Martin, yeah, go ahead and sue me. Make my day out there, you people. Chris, is it going to blow the system if everybody unmutes? We should try. We're going to test Chris. All right, Erica, Emily, unmute yourselves. All right, everybody who's out there, Mama Pope, John in Seattle, Kent, upstate New York. Well, it's your birthday, so you don't get to sing. Everybody worldwide. I know T is watching from the Philippines, and I imagine it's probably 1 a.m. there. Everybody is about to sing happy birthday to Kent because we are your ModPo family, Kent, and you're a year older, and it's nice.
No, thank you. You're making my day out.
That's cool. Well, we're about to make it, really. Here we go. On the count of 3, I'll give you the note. The note is... Happy birthday to you. Come on, Emily Harnett.
Happy birthday to you.
Louder. Happy birthday, dear Kent. Don't hit 3 years old. Happy birthday to you. All right, mute yourselves, please. Kent, happy birthday, man. All right, take care. Thanks for calling.
I know.
All right, bye. That's so cool. We get a call, and it's just his birthday. He has nothing to say. I love it. It's so great. It's so cool. All right, so what do we have going on in the forums?
There's a lot going on in the
Tell us.
forums.
Quote some. Chris, can we get Julia's mic up just a little?
So there are really great questions about the evolving I. So Joy Hubert asks a question about the evolving self from Whitman all the way to Cage, and I think that's something that we've all thought about and maybe said a bit about today even.
Yep.
Nathan Walker says it's important to realize that other people are writing rules which define and control what we can and cannot do. Aleatory poetics is a means of coping with and opening up official language. Jenna Osman's poem is a fantastic example of that.
Yeah.
Michael Rush says, I'm all for questioning rules, but it's essential that those who question must also and equally allow and encourage their questions to be questioned. Annex wrote and asks, isn't this course all about how poets try to make language theirs, get beyond convention to deeply communicate something, deeply or more deeply communicate something?
Mm.
And then there's a nice discussion about who are ModPo poets writing for, started by Joanne Green.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, she says, this course is a lot about difficult poems, and making our way into poems that are hard to get into. So that being said, who are the poets writing for? For themselves, just for the joy of writing, to try to better understand and express their life experience? Are they writing for other poets like themselves who have the tools already to get into this stuff? And then Anthony Watkins and Carol Stephen have both posted really terrific follow-up comments on this question.
That's great, Julie. Thank you for summarizing all that. Let's take 2 of those questions. Let's start with Whitman to Cage. What I'm going to do is call randomly around, And all I want you to do is sort of draw a line from the very beginning of ModPo, because what we said was that the Dickinsonian mode is really going to dominate, or at least overtly dominate, through Chapter 2 up to Chapter 8, particularly, but that in Chapter 9, Whitman's importance comes back. And I guess I want to really just get out on the table some basic points about how you get from Whitman to 9.2. So, Amaris, you're on the spot. Whitman to 9.2. Try it.
I guess the first thing that occurs to me is the idea of taking language from the streets, drawing from the everyday, sort of Whitman's long, exuberant prose gets sort of translated into reductions.
Inclusiveness and an unwilling to make discriminations and discernments and open to all. Emily Harnett, anything else from Whitman to 9.2?
Yeah, if you see Whitman as trying to contain everything, as having like a sort of all-encompassing poetics, then our aleatory poetry, which has a sort of broader criteria of selection, to some extent no criteria of selection, follows in that tradition.
Very good. Erica, Whitman to the contemporary?
I also think that what we get from Whitman is a reminder that language is active and can act, and we see that continuing to come back.
Great. Max, Whitman?
Just to go back to what I said earlier, it starts with this suppression of the ego in the individual, right? It's a collective poetics. It wants to get away from one poet speaking for others and instead try to channel a kind of group expression or collective expression.
Great. Eric, Whitman? Whitman in the contemporary?
Well, I think Ezra Pound talked about Whitman clearing the ground. And if you look at the poetry around the world, at the kinds of freedoms that poets have been discovering and continue to discover, it's a freedom that often acknowledges Whitman as its godfather and as its sacred ghost.
Terrific. Dave, Whitman in this stuff?
Just brings me back to thinking in Leaves of Grass how it started a lot with I, and in that sense you look at it and say, oh, this is egotistical, but then he's talking about I am the ground beneath your boots. He's at the same time completely deconstructing, diluting, and offering the ego out to everyone.
Yeah. Julia?
I think Whitman and Cage are in different ways also acknowledging that there's an idea about the self being dispersed. It's not just about challenging notions about the singular self. It's about creating a poetry that can acknowledge the way in which selfhood is shared and collaborative and dispersed already.
Great. And I'll just add, Lily, do you want to do some Whitman?
I was on the phone, so I missed the question.
Yeah. How do we get what's Whitmanian about the contemporary stuff we're dealing with?
Well, I apologize if somebody said this already, but I think this idea of being more like a cipher than a filter, if that makes sense, like collecting the noises and the things and the perspectives and things around you rather than put it, well, I mean, Whitman certainly interpreted and put his own spin on things, like would never, but if you think about sections of that, of Song of Myself, like Blab of the Pave, or this impulse to collect everything that's in the world as much as possible, then there's a similar impulse with Cage, or even like our later, I think 9.3 poets who are more interested in transcription and recorded sound.
That's really brilliant, and all these points are great, and I hope that people who want to get back to Whitman will feel instructed by all this. But let's just pick up on Lily's point before we go to the phone caller. And Whitman was working out the whole problem of the poetic ego so early, and it is just this problem that someone like McClough and Cage and certainly Joan Rotalick and the 9.3 poets, someone like Goldsmith. Goldsmith is a very Whitmanian ego. One almost want to say egomaniac. Certainly Walt Whitman was an egomaniac, but he was the kind of ego who wanted to be utterly selfless in the way he collected things. So he had the presumption, what I assume you shall assume is the presumption. And yet, as Lily said, he wants a non-curated reception of the world. He doesn't want to discern, to discriminate, and that there's a political and ethical import to non-discrimination. He does not want to discriminate between one thing and another, and it becomes indiscriminate, which is generally culturally a bad word, but non-discriminatory, which is politically and ethically a positive word. And that's the way this thing has worked, and that's why Whitman is so important. He's back. Walt's back. All right. Lily, who's on the phone?
This is Emily calling from Sweden. I think it's the infamous forums Emily W, although I didn't verify that with her. But
wow, we're about to find out.
Yeah.
So I still have this book to give away, right? Because Kent didn't need it. Okay.
Yes, and she's excited to receive it.
Okay, great. Hello, Emily.
Hey.
Are you the famous Emily W?
Yes.
You are. Oh, there's applause. You are Emily. Hey, buddy.
Hey.
How are you?
I'm good.
Thank you so much for all of the effort and energy, the insights, and the intrepidness and the willingness to just go into those forums and stir things up and respond to people. Such enthusiasm. You've been in a lot of MOOCs. Yeah? I know you have.
Yes.
And can you just say a word or two about what's different about this MOOC?
Your engagement, everybody's engagement is just incredible. I've only taken one other class with a professor that had so much engagement, and it makes a huge difference. I mean, and the energy of the students.
Yeah.
My own energy.
Yeah. Thank you.
I mean, it's huge.
Well, I feel honored that I and we here have taken the stance, a particular stance, such that it brings out in you an enthusiasm which is optional, ungraded, non-credit, and free. I mean, I think that's the miracle of this, that you would put so many hours a week into this course, and yet you don't have to do it. That's amazing.
Yeah. But, I mean, there's a lot to learn. So, I mean, that's what drives me. Both,
okay.
I mean, from the poetry, from you guys, from my classmates.
Yeah. So you're going to receive a copy of my book. I feel bad. It's such a big read. And I will be sending you some quiz questions probably around February or so. And then we're going to have a little conference inside the site. This ModPo site will remain open so we can go back in and meet and have a little seminar on my book. I'm kidding, of course. I think it's a good doorstop. I think if you have some friends or frenemies, you could give it to them. You know, everything's going to be good. And it's going to cost a shitload of money mailing it to you, so you better read it. Book rate, yeah, it'll be till February.
I promise it won't end up at some flea market. I promise.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Emily. You didn't call just to have me quiz you like this. Would you like to say something? You have a question?
Well, I'm really intrigued by this chant stuff. I think it's a lot of fun to play with it. I sort of played with a couple poems for my essay, but
yeah.
I mean, I think they're great poems in a way, but it's like I'm not sure how to approach the essay. It's like.
You mean the explanatory part?
Well, like doing a reading, it feels so weird to.
Yeah.
I mean, how
that's such a great question.
Get past that.
All right. Emily, I'm going to have people answer the question, but I'm going to ask you to hang up. We're going to say goodbye, and you'll listen to the answers as they come through your computer, so we can take the next and last caller. But Emily, I just wanted to say thank you again and goodbye, and I hope we'll talk again, and maybe you'll make a trip to Philly. Where are you in Sweden?
I'm outside of Gothenburg. It's in southwest Sweden.
Southwest. Yeah, my wife and I are thinking about where in Europe we're going to go next October, and maybe Sweden is a good option, huh?
It's beautiful also.
Yeah.
I mean, October's hit or miss with the weather.
Well, if everyone in Sweden is as generous and exuberant as you, we'll definitely go there. Yeah. All right, thanks. I'm gonna pose that question, and thank you for calling, Emily.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
So, Julia, would you give some advice how to go about close reading a poem that you generated arbitrarily and you feel weird about doing a close reading of?
So when I wrote this essay myself last year, and as usual, when faced with the prompt that I helped write, I was like, oh, what do I do now? So I'll just share with you what I did, which was I read my poem and then I kind of described what it was like to read it, and then I picked one or two things that surprised me about the poem. So one or two things that I didn't think would happen when I wrote it.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting to happen. I think I did an experiment on Lorraine Niedecker, and I just wrote a reaction to it. It was very free form, and it was fun to write. I recommend it.
So your recommendation would be just respond to what you see there. Okay, Michael, does Dan have a response? We need a microphone though. Zach, do we have a mic? Okay, Dan is going to read what Dan. Sorry, Michael's going to read what Dan has said.
What Dan spelled was, I think this was intended as a kind of final word, but he just said it will fit here, and it will.
Okay.
I just want to say that when we close read a beautiful poem by a careful writer, we make a little of the meaning as we seek the poet's meaning, so most of the meaning is from the poet. When we close read an aleatory poem, or in this case, something from that you make yourself by accident, all the meaning comes from us. So what the dissenters feel is loneliness.
All right. Thank you, Dan. That should be the final word. Okay. Any recommendations? Erica, you're such a teacher's teacher. What do you recommend people do? How do you write? How does Emily write a close reading of something that feels a little weird to her because she created it arbitrarily and it's hers, rather than Sid Corman's or Lorraine Niedecker's?
I think that I would probably suggest to begin with really doing some processing about the process that she went through to generate the poem, even if it is heavily procedural. So to really think about,
what McClough does. That's what Jackson McClough does. He doesn't do a close reading. He just tells you what he did.
Yep. But, to really look carefully, like what decisions did you have to make, which moments surprised you, and then from there perhaps move into the materials of the language.
Very good. Lily, you want to throw in a final thing for Emily? Advice on how she should write this?
I really agree with what Erica said about process, and just like remembering that a little different with other close readings that we've done where we've had to sort of guess at the author's intention, or say, okay, if I want to evaluate if this poem was successful or not, I have to kind of put words in the mouth of the author about what their intention was, but here you were the author, so you might have a sense of what your intention or goal was, and if you approach it from this framework of success or non-success or near success or whatever, then it might be a little easier to evaluate your work that way.
Yeah. Thank you.
And then what happened. That could also be just an amazing way to frame it.
That is cool. So we're going to take the last call, and I'm going to freely interpret the question and then convert it into final words all the way around, and then I want to conclude very quickly with a final word myself. So, Lily, who do we have on the phone?
It's Lowell Murphy.
Lowell! I don't think he's ever called before.
No.
Lowell, how are you?
I'm well, thank you.
You are a great ModPoer. You are really something. And that your profile picture, is that O'Hara's profile?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, it's a schnoz. He has a real schnoz. And so now, whenever I see Lowell Murphy, I only think of that schnoz and O'Hara. Are you O'Hara-like?
No, probably not.
Well, thank you for everything you've done for ModPo over the years. It's great.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's entirely my pleasure.
Yeah.
And
tell us a little bit about yourself. Do you mind? Because I don't know anything about you. You're like a cyber person.
Oh, well, let's see. So I live in the country in Washington State.
Mm-hmm.
I studied theology, and I was a pastor for a long time.
A pastor? What denomination? Do you mind saying?
No, I was United Methodist.
United Methodist.
Pastor.
Yep.
Yeah, I went to school. I went to seminary there in New York City at Union.
Union Theological Seminary?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, big time.
So, and just have always loved, have always loved poetry, and theology and literature was my focus when I was in college. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is my chance to come back to poetry and really make it more of a if I needed a vocation, this would be my vocation now.
Yeah.
But
Well,
I'm
you've
kind of
done a great job, and your Facebook contributions are tremendous. You know, I'm going to break the protocol. I didn't say that before you called. I was going to give a book out, and this one, the one I'm holding in my hand, which I'll tell you about in a second, was supposed to be saved for next week. But you've done ModPo before, so what I want to do is have Lily mail you, if you want it, a book by Caroline Bergvall. Remember Bergvall, who did the Dante translations in the 10th week of the course? She has a book called Meddle English, Meddle, as in fool around with English, Meddle English. It's obviously a pun on Middle English.
Wonderful.
And I'm sure that your theological training is going to make understanding some of the thematics of Middle English clearer than it might be otherwise. And so I'd love to make a present of this book, Meddle English, to you. Would you like it?
I would. Thank you very
Great.
much.
Okay, so before you hang up entirely, make sure you give your mailing address to Lily.
Okay.
Okay, so you have you're going to get the final question, and we're going to interpret it liberally because we have to wrap up. So,
sure.
Go ahead.
I'm actually responding to what was said before, the question that was posed before about do the poets address their poets?
Yeah, it's a question we didn't get to answer.
Person.
Joanne's question about who they write for.
Right, and I wanted to reflect on that. That in my opinion, I'm not going to select this particular poet right now, but I think every poet writes with someone in mind. There is a reader of some kind, and it may be not entirely clear who that is.
Yeah.
But it's an odd thing, when I read Ashbery, I know that his poems are entirely don't have me in mind, but they feel entirely intimate at the same time.
Yes.
They just have that quality. So I know that when he's writing, he has someone in mind, and that comes across in the poem. And that was my experience also. I just want to relate this back.
Yeah.
When during the last section of the class, when I had the opportunity to write for Jamie, poems directly to her, which people then picked up on. So I can't imagine that anyone writes without some person in mind or some persons in mind.
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. I'm going to start our round of final words by responding to it, and then I'm going to invite other people to respond to it or say really anything they want. So be sure, before you hang up, make sure Lily gets your address offline, and then hang up and listen to our responses. And Lowell, thank you for calling, and I hope someday you'll make a trip east and we'll meet face to face.
I hope so too.
Thank you so much. He's a great guy.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to start just by saying something about intimacy and feeling addressed by the poets, but then I'm going to invite people to go around. Quick final words, because we're running a little long. Real quick, really anything about either the current week or the next or ModPo overall. So I'm going to start, but just thinking about the intimacy and also randomness of the meta-poetic you. The you, which would be the most obvious addressee of a poet. We have Sid Corman's you, right? It's not for, lack of something to say, something to tell you, something you should know, but to detain you, keep you from going, feeling myself here, as long as you are. There, I quoted the whole poem. The you there is so intimate, but it's also launched into space, because Sid is addressing it, if it's metapoetic, Sid is addressing it to anyone who reads the poem. So it's both incredibly intimate, one could read that as a love poem, but then it completely becomes intimate without a particular person associated with it. I think that's great. And the other one where I'm reminded of the addressee being both probably very specific and also launched into the world would be Some Trees, of course. And there's been some scuttlebutt about how the 19-year-old or 20-year-old John Ashbery who wrote that poem, let's just pause on that fact for a second, at Harvard, had a little bit of a crush on Frank O'Hara, or maybe a big crush, and that the poem, some people say, is addressed to Frank O'Hara. I'm not sure that's provable. Certainly John doesn't remember that or wouldn't admit it, and O'Hara, alas, is not around to confirm it or deny it. But if you think about that, you immediately go to the you and I are what the trees try to tell us we are, that they're merely being there means something, so that we may touch, love, explain. I mean, it almost doesn't matter who the you was, because Ashbery is pacing off from the world, a distance of his disagreement with the world, his isolation, his loneliness from the world, and he gets to a place where he finds a you, and that you, when we read the poem, is us. And we have been transported from the world to those trees to hang out with John, whether it's John wanting to be with Frank or John wanting to be with us because he's a poet. It doesn't finally matter. But as Lowell suggests, it begins with intimacy, then it evacuates the intimacy as a poem becomes something anyone can have, and then it finally ends up with intimacy as we feel close to Sid and feel close to John in those moments of love. That's the answer to Lowell. So now you guys don't actually have to do an answer to Lowell, so I just want to collect final words, final thoughts, anything you want. We'll start with Max. Emily had to run off to class, so we'll miss her, but we'll start with Max. Any final word briefly, Max?
I have a final couple of words. Remember the 5th of November, the gunpowder treason and plot. I know of no reason why the gunpowder treason should ever be forgot. Happy Guy Fawkes Day, Eric.
Oh, Max, another radicalism coming in from the back door.
Sort of. I think he was kind of conservative, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah. I just started You're radical. Guy was not.
No.
Anyway, Erica, final words.
This is a quote from Ritalic's Essays Wager. One writes essays and poetry to stay warm and active and realistically messy. Everything in mass culture is designed to deliver a space-time in continuous drone. One writes poetry and essays to disrupt that fatal momentum.
Thank you, Erica. Thank you very much. And the reference earlier, bibliographical reference, was Joan Ritalik, and the book is The Poethical Wager. Cool. All right, Maurice, final word.
I was going to say, I wonder if the question, who are these poets writing for, comes out of sort of misplaced clinging to that subject-object, writer-reader dichotomy that they're trying to get away from. So the chance poets are trying to serve as like a vehicle to deliver language back to us in a new form or to create a new norm. And a work that was really revelatory for me, and I think will clear up a lot of these ideas or questions for other people, is next week Erica Baum's Dog Ear and her card catalogs that sort of challenge to see poetry happening sort of naturally, quote unquote, in the everyday environment. And so there are no questions of intention or interpretation necessary. It's sort of just an openness to seeing that.
Yeah. Thank you, Maurice. Maurice is doing a little implicit cheerleading for next week, where we're going to be encountering Erica Baum, who's really a photographer more than poet, but she's created photographic poems. And the two books that we're talking about next week are Dog Ear and Card Catalog. Thank you, Maurice. Thanks for joining us again today. Lily, final word.
I have office hours in an hour and a half, so I hope that you'll come say hi to me online. Also, I've been thinking about something that Max said at the beginning of the webcast, which was like part of the dissent about chance poetry is how hard the poets actually have to work to get away from like solo romantic genius. And I thought that was a good way to put it. And I think like in the next couple weeks, next week as we go through ModPo, even more so, like aleatory poetry, I guess, seems like extreme, but just block copying something that someone else says on the street or just taking a picture of something that you run into is even more distance between like the genius of your own writing and the subject matter that you encounter. So nice work,
9.2 is not the extreme of radicalism. It just keeps getting radicaler in its distancing. And yeah, that's very cool. All right, so I'm going to get some final words from up front, but I'd like the portable mic. Maybe Lily, since you're not tethered to the phone now, you can bring it around. So I want Dan to get a final word, and Mary, yeah, you want one? And Lexa, if you want, it can be very brief, and then we'll go to the table. No, we'll do the table first. So Eric, a final word, please, quickly.
So the visual arts and poetry are always interacting, and I think it's important to think about the curatorial and critical intelligence as something that happens both before and after the play, which creates the poem. And I think if we think about language as something that can be both curated and also the object of historiography, then we can see some of the ways that poets can move from what might begin to seem like random chance into a selection that is ultimately very fruitful, meaningful, and productive.
Terrific. Thank you, as always, Eric. Dave?
Just a quick observation on the question, who does a poet write for? When we read traditional poetry where ego really is at play, we can really look at that concept, who is the poet writing for, because it is tied up with ego. But the interesting thing is, when we try to make ego irrelevant, then that question, who does a poet write for, becomes a little less relevant.
Thank you, Dave. We're going to go with Julia, and then Lily, will you get Mary the mic? Julia, final thought?
There's been a tremendous response lately to hearing poets read their work, so especially hearing Bob Perlman read Chronic Meanings at the table last week. So I just want to say another part of creating meaning and writing for others is the recorded archive and the live performance of the poem. So I encourage everyone to check out Pen Sound, where the majority of ModPo poets are represented in recordings, and read the poems aloud yourself.
And we have a special non-interactive webcast tomorrow night here. We have a poet reading who is a Chapter 9.3 poet.
Yes, Rosemary Waldrop is going to be here, 6 p.m. Philadelphia time.
So please tune in. I'll send an email to everybody about that, so that'll be great. Mary, final thought, final word? Hello.
Hi, Al. Thanks.
Hey.
Well, going off of what Julia just said about these being, in my opinion, I was really struck by how many of these poems this week were sort of documentary. I was thinking in terms of Jenna Osmond's in particular, taking all those documents, and then scattering them around. It was also a capturing of a moment of history and taking this text and reading it as white noise or making sense of the white noise of the text. But in many ways, all of these poems are sort of documentary in their nature. They're documenting either a moment in time and space, like the happenings, or they're documenting a bookshelf and what the books you're getting rid of. And I really liked that quality about it. Thanks.
Thank you, Mary. Lexa, hello, Lexa. Glad you could join us today.
Hi, Al.
Final thought?
Yes, I found writing my essay that I landed in that paradoxical sweet spot that Jackson Flo talks about, right after the operations and a little easy editing that saves us from taste and sentimentality.
Yeah.
And I really like being there because I suffer from a lot of middle class.
You suffer from middle class, and you like this kind of that weird sweet spot where there's you're like a Zen middle class lady suddenly, and that's a really cool thing. Can you say a little more about how that feels? You feel like liberation, you deserve liberation, and you're looking.
Yes, absolutely, and maybe some kind of bravery that I'd try more on my own.
Thank you. That's great. I'm so glad. On the way to Dan, will you give the mic to Kate, because she knows this course really well. She's sitting in on the face-to-face version of it. Any thoughts, Kate?
I would just encourage kind of a fun skepticism at the idea of Walt, of getting out of the way. Is that ever actually possible? And do we even want that? Because when you as a reader approach something, you're going to change it, and you're going to change the meaning, and that's something to celebrate rather than try to avoid.
Thank you. And finally to Dan. Who's reading for Dan?
If you think this is hard, imagine starting the course with Mizostics and working our way through Williams to Emily Dickinson.
Dan, you're the bomb. Dan, you are so totally devilish. All right, so I'm going to conclude here, first by quoting MC Catanese, who's in the Jersey Shore. She's really saying just what Lexa is. And then I want to say a final thought about how great people are in ModPo, and I found a kind of cut through that, a way of expressing it. So MC writes, "Being is art. Ego is judgment without being. Noticing does not involve evaluation. Observation is free when judgments are not present. Going into the process is being. Being is being present and nothing else. Art comes from this state. Arriving at an understanding of contemporary art or poetry puts me into the non-judgmental flow of creativity. This is what is exciting to me. Being is art. Damn, MC. What I did as a way this morning, early morning, I'm up at 4:30, trying to celebrate the people of ModPo 2014, is I did an easy thing. I searched for the word excellent in the forums. Excellent. Just because excellent can be both a shallow praise, you know, you can make a point and someone can say excellent, but it can also be much more complicated than that. And it doesn't have to be in the forums used to refer to ModPo people. It can refer to poets and poems. When I searched for excellence, Julia, I got how many pages of comments? 64 pages. 64 pages of comments in which people praised each other, in which people used the word excellent. And I would submit to you that excellent is not an overused word in a massive open online course. Everything should be considered for its potential to be excellent. I know that people who are tired of overpraising and of the grade inflation, since there are no grades in ModPo, how could they be inflated? But of grade inflation around the world would really not like, but I was moved by this. I'll just quote a few instances of it, very banal, but very moving to me, and then we'll close. A most excellent bit of sharing. Ah, there it is, excellent. An excellent reference. Excellent, the Baroness is one of my favorites. You are making some excellent suggestions. Donna, great job. Don't get hung up on the so-called hierarchy. Your premise is excellent. Word-word relationships, excellent. That was Nathan Walker. Word-word relationships, excellent. Thanks, Anna. Great song, great voices, excellent advice. This is an excellent interpretation, Alain. I really enjoyed reading it. This is probably an excellent answer because it will make me think some more. Your English is excellent, Susan. Welcome to ModPo. Thanks, Alan. I'm a bit anxious about the new experience, but you all did such a good job last year that we have excellent models to follow. Although I have been retired from teaching for some time, I looked for the teacher's site and found it. How great. There are some generous people there sharing and excellent materials. The last line of this essay is excellent and shows an in-depth understanding of the poem. I recommend it to all. Excellent comment. Excellent. Thanks. Thank you for the excellent ideas here. What you say is excellent. I'll be here all year, and we can keep talking. Lots of excellence. Julia, you're excellent. Thank you.
Thank you
so much. Dave, you're really excellent.
Thanks.
And you look excellent. Lee, you're excellently looking.
Oh, shucks.
Yeah, great. Eric, you're excellent. Thank you for your excellence. It's already starting to be a meaningless word, isn't it? Max, you are beyond excellent.
I'll take it.
Thank you. Thank you. Erica, thank you for your excellent participation. Everything you do is excellent. This is starting to backfire. Amaris, I love your excellence. I value your excellence. You're excellent. See you later. Lily, you do everything excellently. This is actually true. She's like, egg salad. You're egg salad. No, seriously, Lily, everything you do is excellent. The least of it is to talk to these people on the phone, which you seem to really enjoy. Joyce Pope, calling from California and promising meatballs. John from Seattle, happy 20th. You're excellent. Amazing. 20 years ago, you were married in Vancouver, and now your marriage is being accepted and officially recognized all over in many places. That's excellent. Kent Eckberg, happy birthday. You're excellent. Have an excellent day. Emily W., from Sweden, you are excellent. You are beyond excellent. You're super excellent. Lowell Murphy, longtime ModPo guy from Washington State. You are excellent. Annex, Michael Rush. Boy, Michael Rush, you are excellent. Keep tugging at our coats, Michael. We need that. Joanne, Lexa here, Joe, Eric again, Mary, Meredith, Dan, Michael. This is Al signing off on because Zach Cardiner and Chris Martin make it possible for me to sign on. They also make it possible for me to sign off. Thank you guys so much. And we will see you next week. Many of you will see each other at Chicago. San Francisco, Wisconsin, and New York, and also tomorrow here live, 6 p.m. We have a chapter 9-3 poet who's actually giving, and you really need to come to. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you soon.